A millionaire doctor meets a patient who seems to have no past. She has never been touched and hides secrets even she doesn't understand. When the romance begins, it's already too late to turn back. If you enjoy love and romance stories, watch until the end, subscribe to this channel, and leave a comment telling us where you're listening from. We'll continue. Dr. Adrian Lucas lives in an aseptic, precise, and completely controlled world. On the 15th floor of Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City, his hands glide across human skin with the same technical coldness with which a sculptor molds marble. A renowned cardiac surgeon at 38, heir to a medical lineage that built fortunes saving others' hearts while shattering their own, Adrian learned early that emotions are noise that compromise precision. The operating room is his sanctuary. There, under halogen lights that transform blood into liquid rubies, he commands a silent orchestra of scalpels and forceps. Each movement calculated, each incision measured to the millimeter. Since 18, when he lost his first patient during an experimental procedure at New York Presbyterian, Adrian built impenetrable walls between his emotions and his profession. Nothing shakes him, nothing penetrates, nothing surprises him. His private practice on Park Avenue reflects this philosophy. Straight lines, neutral colors, controlled silence. The windows offer a panoramic view of the city that never sleeps, but he rarely looks outside. He prefers monitors, test results, numbers that translate life into manageable statistics. His patients respect him for his competence. His colleagues admire him for his intelligence, but all maintain the respectful distance he cultivates like a second skin. Son of renowned cardiologist Edward Lucas, who died under mysterious circumstances 10 years ago, Adrian carries a surname that opens doors and whispers secrets through hospital corridors. There are untold stories about medical experiments in the 90s, about research projects that crossed ethical lines, about children who disappeared from underground clinics. But Adrian prefers not to hear, prefers not to remember, prefers to keep the past locked in a mental drawer he never opens. His routine is like a Swiss watch: surgeries in the morning, consultations in the afternoon, reports at night. He lives alone in a minimalist apartment in Tribeca, where his only companions are medical books and bottles of red wine that never reach the bottom. He doesn't have relationships that last more than 3 months, doesn't cultivate intimate friendships, doesn't allow anyone to sleep in his bed more than once. Isolation is his armor, until Tuesday morning when she appears. The receptionist announces an emergency consultation. Persistent abdominal pain, no insurance, cash payment up front. Adrian almost refuses. He doesn't handle simple cases, but something in the hesitant tone of the female voice on the intercom makes him accept. Perhaps it's the rain hammering the windows, turning New York into a faded watercolor. Perhaps it's the boredom of another predictable day. She enters the office like a ghost who just discovered it has a body. 27 years old, maybe 28, dark brown hair tied in a bun that can't tame some rebellious strands. She wears a simple navy blue dress, a synthetic leather purse, flat shoes that have seen better days. There's nothing extraordinary about her appearance, except for her eyes. Dark honey-colored, they seem to hold secrets that even she doesn't know. She sits in the chair facing his desk without looking around, as if the environment didn't exist. Her hands rest in her lap, motionless, while she describes the symptoms with a clinical precision that surprises Adrian. There's no dramatization, no search for compassion, just objective reports of pains that visit her always at the same time, always with the same intensity. Eliana Vaughn. That's the name she whispers when he asks. She has no documents besides an old ID card, doesn't mention family, doesn't provide emergency contacts. She works as a file organizer at a small company in downtown, a job that allows her to spend entire days in silence, cataloging papers that tell other people's stories. She lives alone in a studio in Williamsburg, with no close neighbors, no apparent social routine. During the initial consultation, Adrian notices details that his medical mind automatically registers. She doesn't look directly into his eyes. Her answers are always paused, as if she needed to translate thoughts from a secret language. When he mentions the need for more detailed tests, including a complete gynecological evaluation, she just nods, without the typical embarrassment most women show. It's in the examination room that Adrian's world begins to crumble. The gynecological exam reveals the impossible. Adrian has examined hundreds of women throughout his career, but never found anything like this. Eliana has never had any sexual experience. At 27, her body preserves an integrity that goes beyond the physical. It's as if she has never been touched by human hands, never felt the warmth of another body against hers, never even imagined what it would be like. The information by itself shouldn't cause impact beyond the professional. The world is vast. Bodies are plural, and Adrian has seen everything in 15 years of medicine. But it's the way she reacts to the discovery that completely destabilizes him. When he explains the results of the exam, Eliana just nods, as if he were commenting on the weather. Without embarrassment, without surprise, without any shadow of apparent desire or trauma. "Doctor, is this important for diagnosing the pain?" she asks, adjusting her blouse with mechanical movements, too precise to be natural. Adrian hesitates. In her honey-colored eyes, there's no curiosity about sexuality, no questions about relationships, not even the recognition that her condition is unusual. It's as if an essential part of the human experience simply didn't exist in her emotional repertoire. Not by religious choice, not by trauma, not by fear, by an absence that seems programmed. "Not directly," he responds, but his voice carries a hesitation he rarely shows. "But I need to better understand your medical history. Do you remember any treatment in childhood? Any period hospitalized?" Eliana closes her eyes for a moment as if accessing a dusty mental file. "I don't remember much from my childhood. My parents died when I was little. I grew up in institutions." The word hangs in the air between them. Institutions. In 1990s America, that word covered a multitude of dark realities. Overcrowded orphanages, experimental clinics disguised as rehabilitation centers, medical projects that used vulnerable children as guinea pigs. Adrian feels a familiar chill, the same sensation that haunts him when fragments of his own past try to emerge from the dark places where he buried them. "What kind of institution?" he insists, but Eliana just shakes her head. "I don't like to remember. Can I do the other tests you asked for?" During the following days, while waiting for the results of the complementary tests, Adrian finds himself thinking about Eliana with a frequency that bothers him. There's something magnetic about that emotional emptiness, that unnatural serenity. It's like observing a lunar landscape, beautiful in its desolation, intriguing in its impossibility. He schedules new consultations, finds medical justifications to prolong the follow-up, requests neurological exams, psychological evaluations, hormonal analyses. Officially, he's investigating the causes of abdominal pain. Unofficially, he's trying to decipher the enigma she represents. Eliana shows up for all appointments punctually, always wearing simple clothes in neutral tones, always carrying the same synthetic leather purse. She answers questions with the same clinical objectivity, but Adrian begins to notice details that his medical mind registers as behavioral anomalies. She has involuntary spasms when she hears unexpected sounds, the elevator noise, voices in the corridor, the phone ringing. Her olfactory memory is absurdly precise. She can identify the perfume the receptionist wore 3 days before, the type of soap in the medical bathroom, even the brand of coffee Adrian had at lunch. But she avoids mirrors with a childish dread, turning her face whenever she passes reflective surfaces. During one consultation, Adrian notices she brings small earphones connected to an old iPod. When he asks about the music, Eliana's eyes light up for the first time. "Bach," she says, and there's something close to pleasure in her voice. Always Bach. The Goldberg variations, specifically Glenn Gould's 1981 interpretation. "I listen to the same recording every day at the same times." "Why?" "It calms me. It's like it organizes everything inside my head, as if it put each thought in the right place." Adrian feels a familiar chill run up his spine. Glenn Gould, the Canadian pianist known for his obsessive interpretations and eccentric behavior, was also the subject of neurological studies due to his anomalous relationship with sound patterns. His recordings were used in experimental therapies in the 80s and 90s, especially in treatments involving behavioral conditioning. That night in his silent apartment, Adrian searches the hospital's digital archives for any reference to the name Eliana Vaughn. He finds nothing. He expands the search to state medical databases, records of deactivated clinics, Archives of Juvenile Institutions. The name appears only once, on a list of patients from an underground medical center shut down in 1998, accused of behavioral experiments on children. The Santa Monica Neurological Research Center operated between 1990 and 1998 in a renovated mansion in Westchester County, officially registered as a children's rehabilitation clinic. In the digitized archives that Adrian manages to access through contacts at the medical board, the project was called Sentinel, a study on neurological development in institutionalized children supposedly focused on therapies for abandonment trauma. The reality was much more sinister. Archived lawsuits reveal behavioral manipulation experiments, unauthorized use of experimental drugs, and psychological conditioning techniques that sought to purify emotional responses in vulnerable minors. The stated objective was to create individuals with extreme emotional control capable of functioning in high-stress situations without psychological compromise. Eliana's name appears on a list of 16 children subjected to the protocol between 1996 and 1998. Entry age, 6 years. Initial diagnosis: traumatic orphanhood with dissociative episodes. Applied treatment: effective containment therapy and neural reorganization through controlled sound stimuli. Adrian feels nauseated reading the reports. Children kept in isolation for weeks, repeatedly exposed to the same musical sequences until their emotional responses were adequately modulated. Procedures that involved sensory deprivation, Pavlovian conditioning, and drugs that suppressed the natural production of oxytocin and dopamine. The goal was to create functional human beings, but devoid of the emotional complexity that scientists considered behavioral noise. But it's when he finds the list of doctors responsible for the project that Adrian's world completely collapses. Dr. Edward Lucas, his own father, appears as a neurological consultant between 1995 and 1997. Beside him, the name that makes Adrian's blood freeze: Dr. Richard Sorrell, his mentor during medical residency, the man he admired as a father figure for years. Sorrell mysteriously disappeared in 2010, shortly after being denounced for unethical practices at New York Presbyterian. Adrian always believed the accusations were unfair, a political persecution within the medical community. Now faced with the Sentinel Project documents, he understands that his naivety was too convenient to be accidental. The following dawn, Adrian drives to the address where the Santa Monica Center operated. The mansion still exists, transformed into a preschool. On the whitewashed walls, children's colorful drawings replace what once were experimentation rooms. But in the basement, according to the architectural plans he obtained from the municipal archive, the old facilities still exist. For days, Adrian oscillates between disbelief and growing obsession with Eliana. Each consultation becomes a disguised interrogation, each exam an excavation in search of traces of what they did to her. But Eliana remains impenetrable, answering his questions with the same disturbing serenity, as if her memories were corrupted files she chose not to restore. "Do you dream?" he asks during a session that should be about the results of the latest tests. "Sometimes," she responds, "I dream of white corridors and music, always the same music. Bach? Yes, but in the dream, it's not comforting. It's like a prison made of musical notes." Adrian feels the urge to touch her, to break that invisible barrier she maintains around herself. His fingers move involuntarily toward her, but stop in the air, suspended by the awareness that any physical contact would be an unforgivable ethical violation. "Eliana," he says, and it's the first time he pronounces her name without professional distance. "Do you remember any doctor from your childhood? Someone who took care of you in the institutions?" She closes her eyes, and for a moment, her face contorts in an expression of pain that disappears so quickly that Adrian questions whether he really saw it. "There was a man," she whispers. "Grey hair, small glasses, always cold hands. He said he was helping me be better, cleaner, purer." The description is exact. Richard Sorrell, as Adrian remembers him 20 years ago. The man who taught him that emotions are noise, that distance is wisdom, that a true doctor must rise above human weaknesses. "Did he hurt you?" "I don't know," responds Eliana, opening her eyes. "I no longer know what is hurting and what is healing. I don't know if what I feel for you is real or if it's just another experiment. The confession hangs between them like a bare electrical wire. Adrian realizes that without knowing when or how, he crossed all the lines he swore never to cross. He's no longer just a doctor intrigued by an unusual case. He's a man obsessed with a woman who may not even be completely real. "What do you feel for me?" he asks, knowing the answer could destroy everything. Eliana stares at him directly for the first time since they met. Her honey-colored eyes fill with an intensity that doesn't match her usual coldness. "I feel that you know me without knowing me, that we share something that neither I nor you completely remember. And I feel—" She hesitates as if the words were sharp objects that hurt when touched. "I feel that I need you in a way I don't understand." Eliana's confession reverberates in the office like an echo that refuses to die. Adrian feels something cracking inside his chest, a fissure in the walls he built over decades. For the first time since adolescence, his hands tremble slightly. He hides them behind the desk, but Eliana notices. She notices everything. "You feel it too," she says, "and it's not a question. That's why you scheduled so many unnecessary consultations. That's why you look at me as if you're trying to remember something." Adrian should deny, should re-establish professional boundaries, should refer her to another doctor. Instead, he gets up and walks to the window, observing New York spread beneath the gray afternoon sky. The city bustles below, millions of people living connected lives, while he and Eliana exist in a bubble of shared isolation. "I need to tell you something," he says without turning around. "About your past, about mine, about things that might be better not to know." During the next hour, Adrian tells everything. The Sentinel project, his father's involvement, Richard Sorrell's disappearance. He shows the documents he managed to gather, the lists of children subjected to the experiments, the descriptions of the procedures. Eliana listens in silence, her hands resting in her lap, her face a mask of serenity that doesn't match the growing intensity in her eyes. "So I was never normal," she says when he finishes. "I never had a choice about who I am." "None of us do," responds Adrian. "But you survived. You became someone functional, independent. That's already a victory." "Functional," she repeats with a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. "Like a well-programmed robot." Adrian turns to face her. "You're not a robot. What you just told me about your feelings, robots don't feel." "How can you be sure? How can anyone be sure that what we call feelings aren't just well-calibrated chemical reactions?" The question is a punch to the stomach. Adrian has always prided himself on his scientific objectivity, but now it turns against him like a sharp blade. If Eliana is a product of conditioning, what does that say about his own feelings for her? What does that say about his capacity to love? "There's a way to find out," he says, his voice hoarser than intended. Eliana tilts her head, waiting. "Touch," whispers Adrian. "Real, non-clinical physical contact. If you were conditioned to avoid intimacy, your body should automatically reject it. If you can bear it, if you can want it." He doesn't finish the sentence, but he doesn't need to. Eliana understands the proposal and its implications. They're talking about crossing the final line between doctor and patient, about transforming a professional relationship into something dangerously personal, about using their own bodies as a laboratory to test the limits of their humanity. "That would be unethical," she says. "Completely. It could destroy your career." "Probably. And it might prove nothing beyond the fact that we're both products of manipulation. It's a risk." Eliana rises from the chair with fluid movements, walks to where Adrian is standing. She stops a few inches from him, so close that he can smell the subtle scent of her shampoo, can count the tiny golden dots in her honey-colored eyes. "If we're going to do this," she says, "it has to be gradual, controlled, like a scientific experiment." With what objective? To discover if we're capable of feeling something real for each other, or if we're just following programming. Adrian feels his heart accelerate in a way he hasn't experienced in years. "And if we discover it's all programming, then at least we'll know the truth. And if we discover it's real..." Eliana's eyes fill with something he can't name. Fear, hope, desire, all mixed in an intensity that makes her tremble slightly. "Then we'll have to decide if it's worth living a real life after so many years pretending." They establish rules. Meetings outside the office, always in public places initially. Conversations about personal topics, gradual sharing of memories and fears, progressive physical contact, first hands, then hugs, then kisses. Each stage would be analyzed, discussed, evaluated for the authenticity of reactions. It's a disturbingly clinical romantic protocol, but it's the only way they know to navigate such dangerous territory. Their first real meeting happens at a bookstore in Greenwich Village on a rainy Saturday afternoon. Eliana arrives punctually, wearing jeans and a simple white blouse that makes her look younger. They walk between the shelves talking about books they've read, places they've visited, dreams they had before understanding that they might just be echoes of conditioning. It's when Adrian touches her hand for the first time, just their fingers intertwined while leafing through an art book, that both realize they've crossed a point of no return. The touch is electric, but not in the romantic way described in movies. It's literally as if long-dormant neural circuits awaken simultaneously, creating connections that both physically feel. The touch triggers something unexpected in Eliana. Her eyes roll back slightly as if she were accessing memories archived in deep places of the mind. Adrian feels her hand trembling against his, but instead of pulling away, she intertwines her fingers more tightly, as if anchoring herself to him to avoid getting lost in whatever dark place her mind is traveling to. "Are you okay?" he whispers, concerned with the sudden paleness of her face. "I'm remembering," she responds, her voice distant. "Not complete memories. Fragments. Hands holding my neck, voices whispering numbers, metallic cold on the skin, but also something good, something warm." They leave the bookstore and walk through the wet streets of Greenwich Village, still holding hands. Each step seems an act of rebellion against everything that was done to them in the past. Adrian feels a mixture of euphoria and terror. Euphoria for breaking the invisible chains that bound him to solitude for decades, terror for not knowing what he'll find on the other side. They stop at a small, intimate cafe, sit at a corner table where they can talk without being heard. Eliana orders chamomile tea, Adrian a double espresso. It's a contrast that makes them smile, she seeking calm, he needing energy to process the intensity of what's happening. "I need to tell you something," says Eliana, stirring the sugar in her tea with hypnotic circular movements. "Since I started visiting your office, I've been writing letters." "To whom?" "To you. Letters I never sent. Pages and pages about things I feel but don't understand, about dreams I have about you, about the fear that all of this is false." Adrian feels his heart race. "Did you bring any?" Eliana hesitates, then takes a crumpled envelope from her purse. "I wrote this last night, after we talked about doing this experiment." Adrian opens the letter with careful hands. Eliana's handwriting is too precise, as if each letter were drawn with a ruler, but the words are pure, raw emotion. "Adrian, I don't know if what I feel for you is love, or just the recognition of someone who suffered similar wounds. But when you touch me, even if professionally, I feel as if I'm awakening from a decades-long sleep. It's terrifying and wonderful at the same time. I'm afraid that this is just another experiment, that someone somewhere is noting our reactions on a clipboard, but I'm also afraid that it's real, because I don't know how to live a real life after so many years being just a laboratory product." Adrian raises his eyes from the letter to find Eliana observing him with suffocating intensity. "You feel this too, don't you? This sensation that someone is watching us?" He nods. For days he's noticed cars following him to the hospital, phone calls that hang up when he answers, strange emails arriving in his spam box with fragments of numerical codes. "I think they never stopped watching us." "Then this could be part of the experiment. Our attraction, our involvement, even this conversation." "It's possible," admits Adrian, "but I can no longer live as if every feeling were a programmed lie. If we're going to be guinea pigs, at least let's choose how to react." They establish a silent pact in that Greenwich Village cafe. It doesn't matter if their feelings are the product of conditioning or genetic manipulation or any other scientific explanation. They're going to live them as if they were real. They're going to allow themselves to feel, touch, desire, even if it means dancing exactly according to the script someone wrote for them. In the following days, they develop a routine of carefully choreographed meetings, dinners in discreet restaurants, walks in Central Park on Sundays, afternoons at the cinema watching films that neither can really follow because they're too busy analyzing each other's reactions. Each physical advance is negotiated like a diplomatic treaty. The first kiss happens on a rainy Thursday in the hospital parking lot, after a consultation that transformed into an improvised therapy session. It's chaste, almost shy, but leaves both trembling in a way that has nothing to do with the cold. Eliana reacts intensely to each new level of intimacy. When Adrian puts his hand on her waist, she closes her eyes and breathes deeply, as if memorizing the sensation. When he kisses her neck, she whispers numbers in German, a language she claims not to know, but that springs from her vocal cords like a conditioned reflex. "Why German?" asks Adrian after a particularly intense caressing session in her apartment. "I don't know," responds Eliana, nestled in his arms on the small sofa. "Sometimes I wake up speaking German. I dream in German, as if a part of me were programmed in that language." Adrian feels ice in his spine. Richard Sorrell was Austrian, made a point of speaking German with residents during the most complex surgeries. He said that German was the language of scientific precision, that thoughts expressed in German were automatically more objective. "Eliana," he says, his voice carrying a new urgency, "I need to find Richard Sorrell. I need to confront him with what we know. It's dangerous. If he's still alive, if he still has power, I can't continue living in ignorance. I can't love you without knowing if this love is choice or programming." She moves slightly away to face him. "You love me." The question hangs between them like an unsolicited confession. Adrian realizes he said the word without thinking, that it escaped his lips like breathing. "I do love you," whispers Adrian, and the words sound strange in his mouth, as if he were speaking a language he learned only theoretically. "I don't know if it's real. I don't know if it's choice. But I love. I love the way you listen to music. I love how your eyes change color when you're thinking. I even love your silences." Eliana touches his face with trembling fingers. "I love you too. And that terrifies me, because I don't know if I'm capable of love or if I'm just executing very sophisticated programming." "Then let's find out together," he says, kissing the palm of her hand. "I'll find Sorrell. I'll make him tell everything." The search for Richard Sorrell becomes a shared obsession. Adrian uses his medical contacts. Eliana dives into digital archives with a research ability that surprises them both. It's as if she instinctively knew where to look, what keywords to use, what connections to follow. They discover that Sorrell didn't completely disappear. He lives reclusive on a rural property in Connecticut, officially retired due to health problems, but still maintaining an active medical license. Neighbors report strange nighttime activity, vehicles arriving and departing at irregular hours, lights on until late hours in a house that should shelter only a sick and lonely man. "He's still working," concludes Eliana on a Saturday afternoon, spreading documents on Adrian's dining table. Records show monthly payments from a German pharmaceutical company, scientific consulting according to the contracts, or continuation of the experiments, completes Adrian, feeling nauseated thinking about the implications. Sarah Berwick appears in their lives like an unexpected ghost. Veteran nurse at Mount Sinai, she worked with Adrian's father in the 80s, before the Sentinel Project officially began. She's a 60-year-old woman, grey hair tied in a severe bun, blue eyes that have seen too much to remain innocent. She seeks Adrian on a Monday morning, appears at the office without an appointment, with an urgency that makes her tremble slightly. "I need to talk to you about your father, about things you shouldn't know, but I need to tell before it's too late." "Too late for what?" "Before they do to you and her what they did to the other children." Sarah knows about Eliana, knows about the meetings, about the romantic involvement, about the investigation they're conducting. She observed everything with the professional silence she learned in decades of medicine, but now conscience weighs more than discretion. "Your father wasn't a monster," she says, accepting a cup of coffee that Adrian offers with trembling hands. "He genuinely believed he was helping traumatized children." Sorrell convinced him it was possible to eliminate psychological suffering through neural conditioning. It seemed like science, seemed like healing. But it wasn't. No, it was emotional mutilation disguised as therapy. And when your father discovered, when he saw what was really happening to the children, he tried to stop it. Sarah explains that Edward Lucas documented everything, the real procedures, the undisclosed side effects, the deaths that were covered up as natural medical complications. He gathered enough evidence to destroy the Sentinel Project and send Sorrel to prison. He died before he could denounce it, continues Sarah. Very convenient car accident on a road he knew by heart. But the documents, he hid the documents. Where? In a safe in your name. He knew that one day you'd discover the truth, that you'd look for answers. He left everything for you to find when you were ready. Adrian feels as if the floor were disappearing beneath his feet. How do you know this? Because I helped him hide it. And because I have the key. Sarah takes from her pocket a small golden key, the type used in old bank safes. Chase Bank, Greenwich Village branch, safe number 1247. It's been registered in your name since 2010. That afternoon, Adrian and Eliana head to the bank like two condemned walking to the scaffold. The safe contains 3 items: a folder with medical documents, a DVD with audio recordings, and a handwritten letter addressed to my son when he's ready for the truth. Edward Lucas's letter is an apology extending over pages, a detailed confession of his participation in the Sentinel project, and a revelation that makes Adrian's blood freeze. He himself was subjected to the experiments as a child. They know that what they find in the safe will change everything, that there will be no return after opening that Pandora's box. You were 7 when Sorrel convinced me you needed preventive therapy for hereditary traumas, Adrian reads aloud, his own voice sounding strange to his ears. He said that doctors' children had a tendency to develop emotional disorders related to early exposure to human suffering. I believed him. I allowed them to do to you the same thing they were doing to the other children. Eliana holds his hand while he continues reading. The letter explains that Adrian was subjected to emotional modulation procedures, that his childhood memories were partially suppressed, that his inability to form deep emotional bonds is not a natural characteristic, but the result of conditioning. But you were different, continues the letter. Your brain resisted in ways that surprised even Sorrel. You maintained your capacity for empathy, just hid it in very deep places. That's why he chose you. Chose me for what? Whispers Adrian. For her, responds Eliana, reading over his shoulder. For me. The final revelation of the letter leaves them in silence for long minutes. Edward Lucas explains that the Sentinel project had a final phase, a supreme experiment, to verify if 2 individuals conditioned since childhood could develop genuine emotional bonds when reunited in adulthood. Adrian and Eliana were deliberately programmed as complementary pieces of a psychological puzzle. Sorrel believed that true love was impossible, writes Edward, that all human connections were just predictable chemical reactions. He wanted to prove his theory by creating 2 emotionally purified people and observing if they would be capable of loving each other or if they would just simulate love through programming. The DVD contains recordings of therapy sessions that neither of them remembers. Adrian's voice as a child, articulating phrases in German with robotic perfection. Eliana's voice as a girl, repeating numerical sequences while classical music plays in the background. And always, supervising everything, the calm and precise voice of Richard Sorrel, guiding the procedures like a maestro conducting a sinister symphony. You were conditioned to recognize each other, explains the recording of Sorrel's voice. When you meet, there will be immediate attraction, but also resistance. The internal conflict will be part of the experiment. We want to observe if programmed love can become real love through conscious choice. Adrian closes the laptop abruptly, unable to continue listening. Eliana is pale, her hands trembling while holding one of the photographs found in the folder. 2 children in hospital gowns, holding hands in a white, sterile room. She at 7, he at 8. Both with empty eyes, expressions too serene for children. We were programmed for each other, she whispers. Like robots, like toys. No, says Adrian with a vehemence that surprises them both. Maybe it started that way, but what we feel now, what we decide to do with these feelings, that's our choice. How can you be sure? Because if it were just programming, it wouldn't be so frightening. It wouldn't be so difficult. They leave the bank in a state of shared shock. New York bustles around them, normal urban life happening while they deal with the revelation that their entire existences were laboratory experiments. They walk the streets without destination, holding hands, each lost in their own abysses of questioning. Sarah knew, says Eliana suddenly. She knew about all this when she sought us out. Probably. The question is, why did she choose to tell now? The answer comes the following morning. Sarah Berwick is found dead in her apartment, officially the victim of a domestic accident. Slipped in the bathroom and hit her head on the edge of the bathtub. But when Adrian goes to the hospital for the bureaucratic formalities, he notices details that don't add up. Contusions on the neck consistent with strangulation, livor mortis in positions that don't match an accidental fall. The security camera of Sarah's building was mysteriously deactivated exactly at the estimated time of death. No neighbor heard noises. No evidence of breaking and entering or theft. It's a professional murder disguised as an accident, executed by someone with enough medical knowledge to simulate natural causes. They know that we know, concludes Adrian that night, nervously pacing around Eliana's apartment while she prepares tea with trembling hands. Sarah was killed because she helped us, and we're next. Or maybe it's part of the experiment, suggests Eliana. Maybe they wanted us to discover. Maybe our reaction to the truth is exactly what they're measuring now. It's a possibility that haunts them. Every move they make could be being observed, catalogued, analyzed. Each decision could be the result of conditioning so deep that not even they themselves can identify it. Adrian notices he's being followed. The same grey sedan appears in his rearview mirror for 3 consecutive days. He receives silent phone calls at specific times, always multiples of 15 minutes, a pattern that awakens fragmented memories of his childhood. And there are men in suits who appear at the hospital, asking questions about his research, about his patients, about a young woman with peculiar psychological characteristics. We have to confront Sorrel, decides Adrian on a Thursday night. It's the only way to discover if this has an end or if we'll live forever like laboratory rats. He could kill us, or he could free us. I can't live with this doubt. I can't love you without knowing if it's my choice. Eliana kisses him with a desperate intensity, as if she wanted to engrave in her memory every detail of that moment. If we're going to do this, I want one night being ourselves without wondering if it's real or programming. One night pretending we're just 2 people who love each other. They make love for the first time that night, with a tenderness that belies all the psychological violence they suffered. Each touch is a claim to humanity, each moan a declaration of independence. Eliana cries while Adrian penetrates her, not from pain but from relief, as if she were finally feeling something completely her own. It doesn't matter how it began, she whispers in his ear while he moves inside her. Now it's ours. Now it's real. By morning they prepare to face Richard Sorrel like warriors preparing for the final battle. Eliana wears a simple white dress, a conscious choice, she explains, because she wants to reclaim the purity that was stolen from her, but this time by her own decision. Adrian wears his most formal suit, as if it were armor against the past. Sorrel's property in Connecticut is hidden among mountains covered with forest, a modernist mansion that seems out of a psychological horror film. When they ring the bell, the door opens automatically as if they were expected. Richard Sorrel awaits them in the living room like a host who invites old friends for tea. At 72, he remains disturbingly elegant. Perfectly combed white hair, small gold-framed glasses, dark grey tailor-made suit. His hands, which Eliana remembers as always being cold, rest in his lap with the serenity of someone who never doubted his choices. Adrian, my dear pupil. Eliana, my masterpiece. How good that you finally decided to visit me. The casual familiarity with which he treats them is more disturbing than any hostility. Sorrel gestures to armchairs arranged around a center table where tea and cookies await, as if he were certain they would come, as if this meeting were inevitable. You have questions, he continues, serving tea in delicate porcelain cups. It's understandable. The experiment has reached the phase where curiosity overcomes conditioning. It was expected. So that's what we are? Asks Adrian, refusing the tea with an abrupt gesture. An experiment? Lab animals that you've been observing for decades? You are much more than that, responds Sorrel with something close to paternal pride. You are the proof that genuine love is possible, even between individuals who were scientifically prepared for that experience. You are the perfect synthesis between nature and nurture. Synthesis? Repeats Eliana, her voice carrying an icy fury that Adrian has never seen before. We are people, not scientific theorems. Ah, but you are both, smiles Sorrel. And that duality is exactly what makes you so fascinating. Observe, even knowing you were conditioned since children, you still love each other. Even conscious that your attraction could be the product of neurological manipulation, you chose to physically consummate your relationship. Doesn't that prove that love transcends its origins? Adrian feels nauseated, realizing that even this confrontation might be orchestrated. You killed Sarah. Sarah was an uncontrolled variable. Her interference was compromising the purity of the data. But her death also served the experiment. Observe how you reacted with unity instead of mutual distrust. Proof of genuine bonding. You're a monster, whispers Eliana. I'm a scientist, and you are my most important contribution to understanding human nature. Sorrel stands and walks to a shelf filled with precisely organized folders. He retrieves a thick file labeled Twin Project Final Phase and places it on the table before them. Everything is documented here. Each of your reactions, each meeting, each progress in the relationship. I have complete records from when Eliana appeared at Adrian's office until the night you made love for the first time. The revelation leaves them frozen. You observed us, begins Adrian. Cameras, microphones, digital tracking, human agents. You were never alone. Every whispered word, every intimate touch, every moment of vulnerability was catalogued for later analysis. Eliana rises from the armchair with movements of a wounded predator. Why? What's the final goal of all this? To prove that love can be engineered and still remain authentic. You two are the definitive demonstration that genuine feelings can emerge even from artificial conditioning. You are the bridge between science and humanity. And if we refuse to continue being your guinea pigs? Asks Adrian. Sorrel smiles with the patience of a teacher facing a stubborn student. You cannot stop being what you are. Even if you destroy all the records, even if you kill me, you will still be products of the Sentinel Project. The only difference is if you choose to embrace this reality or live denying it. There's a third option, says a voice behind them. Everyone turns. In the entrance to the room, a middle-aged woman with a face devastated by time and suffering observes them. Adrian immediately recognizes her from the photographs he found in the archives. Dr. Helen Carter, an American psychiatrist who worked on the Sentinel Project until 1997, when she disappeared after denouncing irregularities. Helen, whispers Sorrel, and for the first time his composure falters. You should be dead, like most of the children who passed through your hands, but I survived. And I dedicated the last 20 years developing methods to reverse your work. Helen approaches with careful movements, as if dealing with wounded animals. Adrian, Eliana, I helped create you, and now I can help free you. Free us how? Asks Eliana. There's an experimental protocol I developed based on the Sentinel Project's own archives. It doesn't erase memories or conditioning, but it allows you to consciously choose which aspects of your personality you want to preserve and which you want to modify. That's impossible, protests Sorrel. Neural conditioning is irreversible. It's not. You just made us believe it was to maintain control over your creations. Helen takes a tablet from her pocket and shows complex neurological graphs. The procedure requires you to go through a series of sessions where you'll relive suppressed memories, confront archived traumas, and then consciously choose how you want to react to them. It's painful, risky, and can fundamentally alter who you are. Or you can remain as you are, intervenes Sorrel. Happy in ignorance, loving each other within the parameters I established. Why risk destroying something so beautiful? Adrian looks at Eliana. In her honey-colored eyes, he sees the same questioning that consumes him. Is it worth risking losing what they feel for each other in exchange for the possibility of genuinely choosing if they want to feel it? If we do this, asks Adrian to Helen, will we still love each other? I don't know, she responds with brutal honesty. But at least it will be your choice. The decision they need to make hangs in the air like a death sentence. Sorrel observes with scientific interest, while Helen waits for an answer that could destroy or free two lives. Adrian feels Eliana's hand in his, the touch that has become an anchor amid the chaos of revelations, and realizes that any choice will change them forever. I need time, says Eliana, her voice barely a whisper. I need to think about who I am beyond what they did to me. You have 24 hours, responds Helen. After that, Sorrel may take measures to prevent the procedure, and I can't protect you indefinitely. Sorrel rises with fluid movements, as if the threat of losing decades of work didn't bother him. You won't do the procedure, he says with absolute conviction, because deep down you know you would risk losing the only true love you've ever felt, and you prefer to live a beautiful lie than face an ugly truth. You might be right, admits Adrian, but at least it will be our choice to prefer the lie. They leave Sorrel's mansion in silence, carrying the weight of the decision that could completely redefine them. Helen accompanies them to a small cabin she maintains in the Catskill Mountains, a refuge where she developed her research far from the eyes of former colleagues. The procedure is dangerous, she explains while preparing dinner in a rustic kitchen. You'll relive traumas that were carefully suppressed. You'll feel physical and emotional pain from memories that seem to belong to other people. And in the end, you may discover that without the conditioning, you're incompatible. Or we may discover that we love each other by our own choice, adds Eliana, distractedly stirring the soup that Helen served. It's a possibility. But you may also discover that your current personality is so dependent on conditioning that, without it, you'll become completely different people. Adrian observes Eliana across the table. Even knowing everything they know now, he still feels his heart accelerate when she smiles, still feels the physical need to touch her, still experiences the sensation that she completes something that was broken inside him. If I change completely, he asks Helen, will I still be me? That's the central philosophical question of the project, she responds. Sorrel believed that personality was just refined programming. I believe there's something essential in each person that transcends conditioning. You'll discover who's right. That night, in the isolated cabin among the mountains, Adrian and Eliana make love with the desperate intensity of those who might be saying goodbye. If I don't love you anymore after the procedure, whispers Eliana, while Adrian penetrates her slowly, deeply, I want you to know that this version of me loves you completely. And if you don't love me anymore, he responds, kissing tears that run down her face, I want the new version of you to be happy, even if it's without me. They fall asleep, intertwined, bodies pressed together as if they could merge into a single being. Each caress carries the weight of uncertainty. Each whisper of pleasure could be the last between these versions of themselves. In dreams, they visit shared memories of a stolen childhood. White corridors, voices whispering instructions in German, the constant sound of classical music masking the screams of other children. By morning, they make the decision. We want to do the procedure, announces Adrian to Helen while she prepares coffee in the rustic kitchen. Are you sure? There's no going back once we start. Certainty is too big a word for this situation, responds Eliana. But we choose to risk the truth instead of living a lie, no matter how beautiful it might be. The procedure happens in the cabin's living room itself, transformed into an improvised laboratory. Helen connects electrodes to their temples, prepares serums with drugs that will help access suppressed memories, and explains that the process will last approximately 8 hours. You'll chronologically relive each session of the Sentinel project, she explains, but this time as conscious adults, you'll be able to choose how to react to each conditioning. It's like rewriting the source code of your personalities. The first memories that emerge are fragmented, Adrian at 7 being taken by his father to a special consultation, Eliana at 6 arriving at an orphanage that wasn't an orphanage. Both relive the terror of children who didn't understand why adults in white coats did painful things while saying it was for their own good. As the procedure advances, they begin to recover memories of their interaction during childhood. They were placed together in various sessions, conditioned to recognize each other through specific sensory triggers. The perfume she wore was the same he smelled during relaxation therapies. The music he associated with calm was the same that played when she was present. You were programmed as two halves of a puzzle, whispers Helen, monitoring their brainwaves. But observe, even as manipulated children, you found ways to genuinely connect. In the recovered memories, Adrian sees himself at 8, holding Eliana's hand during a particularly brutal session. She sees herself at 7, whispering words of consolation in his ear when the procedures made him cry. Even under extreme conditioning, they developed bonds that transcended the programming. It wasn't just manipulation, realizes Adrian amid the memories that dissolve and recompose. We chose each other, Even as children, even as guinea pigs, we chose each other. When the procedure ends late in the afternoon, both awaken holding hands. They are still Adrian and Eliana, but expanded versions of themselves. They remember the conditioning, but they also remember each moment they resisted it, each genuine choice they made despite the manipulation. "How do you feel?" asks Helen. Adrian looks at Eliana with eyes that see everything clearly for the first time. "I feel free to choose to love you," he says. "And I choose." "Me too," she responds, kissing him with a passion they now know is genuinely theirs. "I too choose to love you." 6 months later, Adrian walks through the corridors of the new medical center he founded in Brooklyn. Unlike the aseptic environments where he worked all his life, this place pulses with humanity. Colorful walls, ambient music, staff who genuinely smile. It's a clinic focused on childhood trauma, where children who suffered abuse receive treatment with dignity and love. Eliana works as a coordinator of alternative therapies, developing protocols that use art and music to heal wounds that traditional medicine can't reach. Her personal experience with psychological manipulation transformed her into a fierce defender of vulnerable children. Together, they created a space where healing happens through choice, not imposition. "Dr. Adrian," calls the receptionist, "your wife is in room 3 with the Sanders twins." Wife. The word still sounds strange in his ears, but strange in a good way. They married in a simple ceremony 3 months ago, surrounded by few friends and the certainty that they freely chose each other. There was no exotic honeymoon. They preferred to spend 2 weeks in a rented beach house, rediscovering intimacy without hidden cameras or scientific analyses. Adrian finds Eliana sitting on the floor of the therapy room, surrounded by 2 8-year-old children drawing with colored crayons. She wears a simple yellow dress, hair loose falling over her shoulders, and when she smiles at him, Adrian feels the same rapture as in the first days, but now tempered with the certainty that it's choice, not programming. "How were today's consultations?" she asks after the children leave with their parents. "Intense," he responds, helping her put away the art materials. "But each child we managed to help is a victory against people like Sorrel." Sorrel was found dead in his Connecticut mansion 2 weeks after the confrontation. Officially, heart attack. But Helen discovered that he destroyed all the Sentinel Project files before dying, as if he knew his time was up. Perhaps it was disguised suicide, a last attempt to control the narrative of his legacy. Helen continued her research, now focused on developing treatments for other victims of similar experiments. They discovered that Adrian and Eliana were not unique cases. Dozens of children were subjected to the Sentinel Project over the years. Some died, others disappeared, but some survived and now seek help to rebuild their identities. "I have a surprise for you," says Eliana as they walk through the clinic's parking lot. "What kind of surprise?" She stops beside the car and looks at him with that mysterious smile he's learned to associate with important revelations. The kind that will change our lives forever. From her pocket, she takes out a small rectangular object that Adrian immediately recognizes. Pregnancy test. Positive. For a moment, he's speechless. Then he takes Eliana in his arms and spins her in the air, both laughing like teenagers in love. When he puts her back on the ground, there are tears in both their eyes. "Are you afraid," she asks, "that our child might carry sequelae of what they did to us?" "I am," admits Adrian, placing his hand on her still flat belly. "But I also know this child will be consciously loved, raised with freedom of choice, protected from any form of manipulation. And if he or she has the same problems we had, then we'll teach that problems can be overcome, that conditioning can be broken, that true love is always a choice." They drive home through New York's chaotic traffic, planning how to reorganize the apartment to receive a baby, discussing names, imagining what it will be like to raise a child when they themselves are still learning to be functional adults. At home, they prepare dinner together, in the small but cozy kitchen that Eliana decorated with plants and photographs of happy moments. It's a simple life, common, exactly the opposite of the controlled existence they led for decades. "I still have nightmares sometimes," confesses Eliana while they chop vegetables for the stir-fry. "I dream that I wake up, and all this was just another phase of the experiment." "I do too," responds Adrian, "but then I remember that nightmares are real, and experiments don't include imperfections. If it were all programming, We would be happy all the time. We are imperfect, she agrees, kissing his neck. And that's what makes us real. After dinner, they sit on the small living room sofa, Eliana nestled in Adrian's arms while he caresses her hair. On television, a documentary about neuroplasticity explains how the human brain can reorganize itself even after severe traumas. It's ironic and comforting at the same time. Adrian, whispers Eliana, thank you for choosing to love me. Thank you for giving me something worthy of being chosen. They make love that night with the tenderness of those who know that each touch is a conscious decision. There are no more doubts about the authenticity of their feelings, no more fear that it's all an illusion. When Adrian penetrates Eliana slowly, looking into the honey-colored eyes that first fascinated him, he knows he is loving by his own choice. I love you, she whispers, while he moves inside her. I love you too, he responds. And I choose to love you every day for the rest of my life. Months later, when their son is born, a boy with dark eyes like Adrian's and sweet smile like Eliana's, they finally understand that they've won. They created new, unprogrammed, unconditioned, unmanipulated life. A life that will be free to make its own choices, love by its own will, be human without scientific interference. Sorel was wrong. Love is not just chemistry or programming. It's daily choice, conscious decision, renewed commitment. And when two people choose to love each other despite everything that was tried to prevent it, when they decide to build something real on artificial foundations, when they transform trauma into strength and manipulation into freedom, they create something more powerful than any scientific experiment. In the small house they bought in the outskirts of New York, far from the laboratories and hospitals where their lives were shaped, Adrian and Eliana build each day an existence based on genuine choices. And when their son smiles at them, free of any conditioning beyond the unconditional love of parents who learn to love by their own decision, they know they have finally defeated all the ghosts of the past. The experiment ended. Real life has just begun,